As a child, I was terrified of horror movies, as many children are. Whenever I watched one, I would bundle up in my blanket in fear, and then stay up all night, vigilantly keeping an eye out for any monsters hiding in the closet or lurking outside the window. But that all changed when I changed my approach to watching horror films. Instead of hiding from the screen, I started sitting forward. Instead of cowering, I would punch the air whenever I thought a monster was nearby. I would even yell out things like, "Come and get me," or "I could take you," at the screen when I felt particularly frightened. And when I started watching horror movies that way, I suddenly wasn't as scared anymore. I started sleeping through the night, and I even enjoyed them. While it might be a silly example, it did teach me that instead of being reactive to fear, I should start being active in fighting it. When I took a fight stance instead of a flight stance, I felt more confident and my fear melted away. So, what does this have to do with procrastination? Well, procrastination is often a product of fear. We certainly don't procrastinate because we enjoy adding stress to our lives. We actually often procrastinate out of a fear of failure. We fear not living up to our own hopes for ourselves. We feel stressed to perform well because we care so deeply about what we do that we create high expectations for ourselves, which end up causing anxiety because we're not sure we can meet those expectations. We fear the pain that will come with actually working on a project or task and then finding that we didn't do such a great job after all. In fact, we become so afraid of not succeeding that we put off the thing we really need to get done until the panic sets in. And ironically, we end up doing a rush job that we're not even proud of. Procrastination is our mind's way of trying to avoid these feelings of stress and anxiety. Instead of working on the thing causing our fear, like that homework assignment or that big project, we turn to distractions that provide short-term, instant gratification and grant us some stress relief. The part of our brain that wants us to procrastinate doesn't understand that we're setting ourselves up for more pain later. That part of us only lives in the present moment. And in the present moment, the quickest and easiest way to feel happy is to avoid the thing causing our stress and anxiety, aka the chore, task, or project we want to procrastinate. For example, you might find yourself scrolling on the internet or listening to music for hours without having accomplished anything you really needed to get done. You might even find yourself productively procrastinating. Productive procrastination occurs when we fear doing a particular task, but want to experience the enjoyable feeling of being productive. So we end up doing other, less important chores and to-dos that don't really help us move forward. For example, you might find yourself reorganizing your desk or rearranging some folders. But these things just make you feel productive, when in reality, you are just spinning your wheels to evade doing the thing you really should be doing. Of course, this all comes crashing down on us when our deadlines approach. The panic sets in, and sometimes we are able to pull through at the last minute and get our assignment done on time. But we don't always have deadlines to save us. Some things have no due date, like working out, changing careers, fixing a relationship, or putting more effort into a business. Procrastinating things like these can have terrible consequences because we don't ever live up to our full potential. But how is one supposed to ever stop procrastinating if there are no deadlines, and therefore no panic to step in and save us? How do we avoid procrastination before it even begins? Step 1. Acknowledge your fear. The first step to avoiding procrastination is to acknowledge your fear. Determine the reason why you have a habit of procrastination, so that you can start to think around your emotions. Ask yourself questions like, why is this particular assignment, project, or task stressing me out? Do I have high expectations for myself that I'm not sure I can meet? Do I feel like I need to live up to previous work I've done in the past? When you get honest with yourself, you end up facing your fear and realizing that it is both very real and currently holding you back. Step 2. Establish your why. The second step to avoiding procrastination is to establish why you want to stop procrastinating. Is it because it's the only way to break through to the next level of success? Because you want to be the kind of person who keeps their word and gets their stuff done on time. Because you want to enjoy free time later. What will the consequences be if you keep procrastinating? When we ask ourselves these questions, we replace our anxiety of failure with new emotions. Excitement about the rewards we'll receive when we accomplish our goals on time, and even fear of what will happen if we continue procrastinating. Step 3. Remove distractions. The next step to avoiding procrastination is to make sure your environment is conducive to productivity. Remove all distractions from your space. I'm a big fan of turning off my phone and putting it in my sock drawer, so I'm not tempted to scroll on social media or answer messages. Step 4. Take immediate action. Finally, the last and most important step is to take immediate action. As soon as you realize that you are procrastinating, or that you are even thinking about procrastinating, it's vital that you take immediate measures to start working on the project you need to work on, even if it's just a tiny amount. It is much easier to continue a task than start it from scratch. Once you get the hardest part done with your project, which is just starting in the first place, it's much more likely you will keep working. You can take immediate action by setting a timer to work on a small piece of your project for 5 minutes. Seriously, it only takes 5 minutes to get started. After the 5 minutes are up, take a 5-minute break. Over time, work yourself up to the full Pomodoro method, which breaks your workload down into 25-minute chunks, followed by 5-minute breaks. Just like how I overcame my fear of watching scary movies, when you find yourself procrastinating, take a moment to change from a reactive state to an active state. Let the project or assignment or chore you're supposed to work on know it can't scare you. When you acknowledge your anxiety's presence, you take the first step towards removing it. Then, attack your procrastination head on. Take immediate action to curb the slippery slope that is, I'll work on it later. Because the opposite of procrastination is not actually productivity, since productivity can be a form of procrastination, as we've discussed. The opposite of procrastination is actually courage. When you gather the courage and determination to really examine your procrastination habits, you'll find that you do have the motivation to overcome them, get to work, and relieve your stress in a healthy way. Imagine for a moment that you are the captain of a great sea voyaging vessel setting out on a journey to an island you've never been to before, but you know has many great riches. The weather is fair, your maps point a clear course, and everything is going in your favour. However, as you set out on your journey, you discover that your crew members have started to grumble. It seems they have doubts as to whether the island exists, whether the ship can actually make the journey, and whether they really deserve the riches, should they find them. The crew decides to mutiny, turn the ship back around, and head for the port where they came from. That seems a bit silly, doesn't it? Not deserve the riches? Even though everything was going well, and you, the captain, knew exactly where you were going and what you would find there, they still had doubt. Unfortunately, we do this to ourselves all the time. We sabotage our own endeavours by overthinking the whole thing, casting doubt on ourselves and reverting back to our old habits. Instead of asking out the person we'd really like to be with, starting the business we've always dreamed of, working out regularly, or any other number of important actions we know we should take in order to have a happy, fulfilling life, we mutiny ourselves and send us back where we came from. Nothing changes, and we never find the treasure. But we can gain control of the crew members, that are our emotions, by following a few steps to make sure we forge ahead despite the fear. The first thing we can do is change the way we think about our goals. In Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within, How to Take Immediate Control of Your Mental, Emotional, Physical and Financial Destiny, he explains that some people make so many evaluations that even a minor decision turns into a major production. In order to exercise, they must 1. Get up, 2. Find some workout where they don't look too fat in, 3. Pick out the right athletic shoes, 4. Pack everything up in their gym bag, 5. Schlep over to the gym, 6. Find a parking spot, 7. Climb the stairs, 8. sign in. 9. Go into the locker room. 10. Squeeze into the workout clothes. And 11. Finally attend the class. Hit the stationary bicycle and sweat like crazy. And then when they're done, 12. They have to do all this again in reverse. Of course, these same people can easily get themselves to go to the beach. They're ready in a heartbeat. If you ask them why, they'll tell you, well, to go to the beach, you just hop in the car and go. When we think of all the micro steps we have to take to reach our goals, we inevitably overwhelm ourselves and freeze before we even take the first step. Instead of overthinking and breaking the action into a million pieces, it can be helpful to think of the action you need to take as one big step, or one chunk. By changing the way we think about going to the gym, or whatever it is we're trying to do, we can change our emotional response to the action. Just going to the gym sounds simple and doable, and we're therefore much more likely to actually do it, because we're not emotionally overwhelmed. Next, remember that other people are mostly interested in themselves. No one is really paying too close attention to you. That may seem harsh, but it's actually liberating. The reality is that other people are so absorbed with their own struggles, fears, failures, successes, and what they're going to have for dinner tonight, that they rarely take too much time out of their day to consider what you're up to. When we remember this, we're less likely to fear the judgment of others, because we know it's not really an issue. Try meditation. Practicing meditation is incredibly helpful for clearing the mind and centering your emotions. With the breath, you can exhale all your self-doubt and anxieties, and inhale energy and determination to move forward despite your feelings. If you're a new meditator, try one of the many meditation apps on your phone. Even if you meditate for just a few minutes, it can produce incredible results. Let the buzz of thoughts in your head out onto the page. When we overthink, our heads can get so clouded with buzzing thoughts that we can't really evaluate each idea clearly and realistically. A great way to reduce overthinking is to journal your thoughts. Write down everything you're thinking without holding back. Just get it all down on paper so it's out of your head. Then, reread your writing and debunk each of your fears and anxieties. Ask yourself questions like, is this fear really worth keeping me from trying something new? Will this fear result in my death or the end of the world? Am I just negotiating with myself to try and get out of doing something I know I should do? When we evaluate each of our fears, they lose their power because we realize that they aren't as big a problem as we thought they were. And if you can't journal, talk out loud. If journaling doesn't appeal to you, you can accomplish the same thing by talking with someone you trust. Airing your thoughts and feelings often makes them lose their power. So, you can move forward with your goals. You might realize that your overthinking has been ridiculous and the problem isn't so complex. Or the person you talk with might have some insight you hadn't considered yet. Embrace your self-doubt. One of the best things we can do to overcome our self-doubt is actually embrace it. Make the decision to embrace your discomfort and embarrassment. Adopt a learning mindset and accept that failure is a possibility. And that's okay. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen if I fail? If the answer does not include dying, then you will probably be fine. We have to realize that the only way to learn is to try new things. Which means we'll probably end up messing things up sometimes and looking a little silly. Remember, that's part of the process and totally natural. In fact, you can even plan on doing it wrong first. This will give you the permission to let go of perfection. Most importantly, take action anyway. After you embrace your self-doubt and embarrassment and fear and anxiety, you have to take action in spite of them. When we take action, we accomplish a variety of things. 1. We stop overthinking because we're focused on moving forward. 2. We actually move towards our goal, obviously. And 3. We give ourselves momentum so the next time we encounter self-doubt, we remember that the last time wasn't so bad and we can forge ahead regardless. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Continue this process over and over again until you gain confidence in yourself that you can achieve your goals and that you are not an imposter. Self-doubt is a habit, but so is self-confidence. To replace the one with the other takes a bit of time. To break the self-doubt habit, you have to repeatedly take action despite your feelings. Nothing stings more than not reaching your full potential because you sabotaged yourself by thinking you weren't good enough, smart enough, or whatever enough. Not being whatever enough should not be the barrier to entry for trying to achieve something meaningful. So, don't let yourself be the reason you didn't even try, and don't let those pesky crew members steer your ship away from its destination. Do you ever find yourself sitting down to work on a project for your job, study for an important test, or even just get a simple chore done, but find yourself almost immediately scrolling through social media for hours at a time? While plenty of fun, social media can, unfortunately, keep us from being our most productive selves. Social apps are designed to keep users on them for as long as possible. There's always a new, funny, or interesting thing to look at. We're always getting new likes, comments, and notifications demanding our attention. Social media gives us a quick hit of dopamine every time we use it, which is why we keep coming back, and why it's easy to quit working on a difficult task that may be causing us anxiety, and instead return to social media, which helps us not think about our responsibilities. Losing focus can be a result of a distracting environment, not preparing yourself mentally for your work session, or not having the right systems in place to make sure you stay on task. Luckily, focusing is something we can learn and practice. It may take time to build up your focusing capacity, but through repeating focusing techniques, you can take back control of your own mind and become more productive. In fact, there are many simple things you can implement right away to start seeing results. First, prepare yourself and your environment before you begin. Before sitting down, opening up your notebooks and laptop, and busting out all your colourful highlighters, it's important to prepare yourself and your environment for a long period of intense focus. You can prepare by writing out your to-do list the night before. If you know you're going to need to focus for a long period of time the next day, take a few minutes to write down a list of all the tasks that you want to accomplish. Make sure this list is as specific as possible. For example, instead of simply writing down "study Spanish," write down something like "memorize 20 Spanish words." This way, when it comes time to actually focus, you won't need to spend any time wondering what you need to do. You'll know the specific task you need to accomplish, and you'll be able to get straight to work. Writing down your tasks the night before helps you prepare mentally, because your brain will think about your to-do list as it sleeps, and you'll be ready to tackle your tasks when it comes time to start. Next, make sure you get enough sleep. Poor sleep can make it incredibly difficult to accomplish anything. Your mind doesn't have the energy it needs for intense periods of focus. If you really have to focus on a project, even though you're running on low sleep, try taking 10-minute naps in between tasks so you can start to regain some of your energy. Then, choose a time of day to work when you know you'll be at your most energized. Some people feel super refreshed and energized early in the morning. Others feel extra focused in the evening. Pick the time of day to work when you are at your most productive. Then schedule your day around that. This way, you'll make sure you're optimizing your focusing abilities. Your environment is also incredibly important when it comes to maximizing your focus. To make sure your environment is optimized for productivity, you can find the right place to work. More extroverted people may focus well in a coffee shop with other people around. More introverted people may prefer the quiet of their home office. Find a place that works best for you. It can also be helpful to change your workspace in order to stimulate your brain. If you always work in your bedroom, moving into the living room might help change things up and make you more likely to focus. Have a clean workspace. Remove any projects or items that don't have to do with what you're immediately working on. This way, you won't be tempted to switch tasks midway. Perhaps most importantly, turn off your phone or other distracting electronics and place them in another room. The lure of notifications popping up on our phones can be a huge distraction. The absolute best way to stop feeling tempted to scroll through social media is to remove the distraction entirely. Turn your phone off and put it in another room or in a drawer somewhere you can't see it. Removing it from your space will help tremendously when it comes to focusing on the task at hand. Like they always say, out of sight, out of mind. If you're working on your computer, you can also limit distractions by turning off notifications from other apps. putting your browser in full screen mode, and hiding your bookmarks bar. This way, you only have the work in front of you to think about. Right before getting to work, take a few minutes to do some breathing exercises and look over your to-do list. Prepare yourself mentally right before you start working. Thinking over all your tasks and imagining completing each one can make getting started much easier. It's also very difficult to go from a scattered brain to a focused brain in a matter of seconds. So, make sure you take the time to calm your mind before diving in. While working, have a healthy snack and drink nearby. When we're feeling unfocused, we can be tempted to try quick fixes like caffeine or sugary foods, but becoming dependent on them to focus can have long-term harmful effects. Instead, try to nourish yourself with a healthy diet so your body has all the nutrients it needs to operate at its best. Turn on classical music, nature sounds, or other calming sounds in the background. Putting on some relaxing music is great for putting you in a focusing mood. Not only does it calm the mind, but it also improves memory and performance. Finally, remember that hours and hours of focus work is an unrealistic goal. A few weeks ago, I decided to try clocking all my hours while working from home. I was working a lot at the time and expected that I was probably working more than the typical 8-hour day. When I clocked my hours, I made sure not to include any breaks I took, and only put myself on the clock when I was really focused and productive. After a few weeks of clocking my hours, I discovered that the actual time I spent being productive was typically between 3 and 4 hours a day. In fact, it was a miracle if I got 5 hours. At first, I was appalled and frustrated. I thought I had been working so hard this whole time, just to find out I wasn't even making the normal 8-hour workday minimum. Turns out, focusing intensely on work, especially creative work or anything that involves a lot of brain power, is exhausting. During the day, I would take multiple breaks to keep myself feeling fresh. I would work out, have an hour-long lunch break, and sometimes I would just scroll on my phone. And it turns out, that's totally normal and healthy. Which is why it's important to make sure you set realistic expectations for yourself for how long you can focus on any given task. You wouldn't expect yourself to work out for 8 hours straight with no rest. So, why is studying or doing mental work any different? They both actually burn a lot of calories. So while social media and other distractions are a danger to your ability to focus, focusing for too long is also detrimental, and you may experience burnout. Make sure to give yourself plenty of brain breaks, move around, and don't set unrealistic expectations for yourself so you can get the most out of your productivity sessions. Keep working on focusing for extended periods of time, and you'll eventually work your way up to be able to focus for quite a long time. Just remember that focusing for too long isn't always the best idea. Take breaks, stay healthy, and you'll find yourself focusing like a pro. Why do we feel anxiety about starting something new? Why do we hold ourselves back from beginning a new job, a new business, starting or ending a relationship, or even moving to a new city? How can we overcome that fear and move forward? It's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, we have anxiety that the thing we're jumping into won't work out well. And on the other hand, we fear we might be giving up something that would have been smart to stick with. These two anxieties gang up on us and make it difficult to make a decision. But the truth is that fear, anxiety, and nervousness are a fundamental aspect of life. We all experience these emotions when considering new paths, because we can't be sure how things will turn out. Risks are scary, no matter what. We're nervous to reveal ourselves, to put ourselves out there, to be exposed. Our minds, in an effort to protect us, imagine all the horrible possibilities that could result from a new situation. This response is a useful tool, one that helps us make good life choices. However, when we let fear control our decisions, we can miss out on massive opportunities, growth, and potential happiness. This is why it's crucial that we learn how to deal with our anxiety in healthy ways so we can move forward and build the life that we deserve. The first way we can begin to deal with our anxiety is to acknowledge it. When we don't acknowledge our fear, it's easy to let it control us. That's why it's so important to reflect on why you are hesitant to begin your new venture. Are you really holding back due to carefully considered, logical reasons? Or are you just experiencing the natural fear of starting something new? Without introspection, fear runs rampant. But once the anxiety is acknowledged, you can begin to diffuse it with logical and emotional arguments. Next, accept the possibility of failure. Once you've acknowledged your anxiety about starting something new, there are many different ways to deal with it. One powerful way to ease your fears is to radically embrace your anxiety. Get familiar with the feeling of being afraid and embrace it. It's there to protect you, but it doesn't have to control you. In fact, go ahead and accept that failure is possible. Even plan on doing it wrong first. Plan for your first attempt to totally blow up in your face. Plan that you may not have all the answers, that you might not be perfectly prepared. Failure does not make you any less worthy of trying, and it doesn't mean that you should give up. It's simply a redirection to help you find the correct path. By giving yourself the freedom to fail, it will make starting much less daunting. And remember, you wouldn't be nervous about starting something new if you didn't really care about it. Being afraid is often an indication that the thing you're afraid of is truly important. If you care so much about something, then isn't that a good sign that you should probably do it? It may be a big undertaking, but it's going to force you to grow and change and put in a lot of effort. And that's exciting. Don't pursue success, pursue learning. Another way to reduce anxiety is to fundamentally orient your life around learning instead of achievement. Rather than hoping to succeed at something new, start your venture out of a desire to learn. Then, no matter what happens, even if you fail, you will learn something from the experience. When you shift your core values away from badges of success and towards a learning mindset, it makes trying new things much less intimidating. Your ultimate goal is simply to learn. So whether you fail or succeed, you will certainly learn things that will help you in your next endeavor. This mindset is also helpful since you're more likely to continue trying new things throughout your life because you're not interested in staying stagnant. Rather, you're interested in continual growth, which requires stepping outside of your comfort zone regularly. Another useful tactic to reduce your fear is to stop trying to smother it and instead replace it with something else that's more powerful. In other words, replace your anxiety with something else. Think about your reasons for wanting to start something new in the first place. Why do you want to start that new job? Why do you want to start that new relationship? Why do you want to start that new YouTube channel? Why do you want to start that new Etsy store? Come up with a long list of reasons that excite you about starting your new venture. Reasons that drew you to that course of action in the first place. And write them all down. This exercise helps you actually replace your anxiety with excitement. Instead of focusing on negative outcomes that might happen if you start, you'll focus on all the great things that might happen if you do. Finally, cultivate ignorance. This might seem counterintuitive, but cultivating a certain amount of ignorance can help you stop worrying so much and help you take actions to move yourself forward. It's common for people to do a lot of research before taking action. They spend hours in front of a computer learning about starting a business, but never do. Or they read lots of books on learning a skill, but never put it into practice. At a certain point, this becomes a crutch, allowing you to feel like you're moving forward when you're really just avoiding taking action. Too much research is detrimental because it keeps you from moving forward and because it causes you to easily become overwhelmed. In Martin Scorsese's masterclass, he explains that cultivating ignorance is useful for beginning new things. He explains that if people understood all the things that go into making a feature film, they'd never do it. This applies to so many other things in life as well. Everything involved in starting a business, all the things you're going to have to do to make a relationship work, the myriad of steps it takes to move to a new town. Even though they are big tasks, they are doable, and people do them all the time. Instead of focusing on the big picture, just focus on the first steps you have to take. This will help ease feelings of overwhelm. Find what works for you and then take immediate action. In many situations, there's nothing worse than not starting at all. When you truly feel passionate about something, your passion will outweigh the potential negative outcomes. In that case, not starting at all is actually the worst possible scenario. Finally, just remember that everyone feels fear too. Everyone has to go through learning periods before they find what really works. All the most successful people have actually just failed more than regular people. They failed so much and not given up that they've ended up learning more than most and used that knowledge to build something great. And the reality is, anxiety about starting something new never really goes away. That's why we need courage. So, if all else fails, just do it scared. When my brother became a math teacher, he told me there were 3 types of students in his class. The first kind of student did less than 40% of the homework, crammed for the big test the week before, and ended up failing the test. The second kind of student did about 60 to 80% of the homework, studied a bit for the big test, and ended up skating by with an average grade. The third kind of student did 100% of the homework, didn't study very much for the big test, and no matter what their ability or talent level, usually passed the test with a high B or better. So, what made the students who did 100% of the homework more successful when it finally came time for the test? It's not that they were necessarily smarter or more talented, it's that they didn't see the homework as optional. By putting in a little bit of effort over an extended period of time, they saw better results. That's because nothing beats consistency. Nothing beats showing up every day, doing the work, and putting in the time. So, if you want to achieve your goals, you have to master consistency. You have to see your goals as mandatory, not optional. And you have to do the homework for your goals in order to accomplish them. But how can we master consistency? How can we follow through on our homework? Here are 8 ways to help you start mastering consistency to achieve your goals, so you can ace the big test we call life. 1. Make a plan. Just like a teacher creates a lesson plan with mini homework assignments throughout the semester, you can create a plan for reaching your goals. Write down a timeline that includes your start date, end date, and exactly what actions you're going to take to reach your goal. If your goal is to lose 20 pounds, decide what kind of exercise routine you're going to do, what kind of nutrition plan you're going to follow, and so on. 2. Create milestones. Milestones are small goals within your larger goal that help you see how much progress you're making. Because the little things really do matter when it comes to goals. So celebrate them. If your goal is to save $1,000, keep track of when you reach $100, $200, and so on. Make it feel like an event, because it is. Every step forward is a success. By celebrating your milestones, you'll feel like you're making progress and won't lose steam as easily. 3. Actually make time for your goals. One mistake a lot of people make when setting goals is forgetting to block out time to actually work on them. Let's say your goal is to start selling landscape art online. You'll need to paint a large body of work to sell. So you might plan to spend 2 hours painting every day from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Now, those 2 hours cannot be used for anything else. 8 to 10 is only for painting, so you have no excuse not to do it. 4. Only worry about the present moment. If you've set an ambitious goal for yourself, it can be easy to think about how you'll work on your goal tomorrow, or the next day, or the next week, or the next month. But don't let yourself get caught up thinking about the future. Thinking too much about the future can get overwhelming and make it more likely for you to quit. The only moment that actually matters is right now, and what you're going to do with it. How are you going to be consistent right now? How are you going to show up today? 5. Stop negotiating with yourself. The students who did best in my brother's math class simply did not negotiate with themselves. They didn't see the homework as optional. They just did it. If you find yourself thinking thoughts like, "Oh, I'll just do half my workout today," or "Oh, I'll only write for 20 minutes instead of an hour," stop and recognize that this is your brain trying to negotiate out of work. We instinctively try to avoid pain, which causes us to procrastinate or negotiate with ourselves. But remember that you've committed to this goal and have to see it through right now. Don't let your inner negotiator win. 6. Revisit your goals often. Journal about your goals every day. Write them down on sticky notes and put them on your bathroom mirror. Set a repeating alarm on your phone and title it, Work on Goal Now. Keep thinking about your goal as much as possible so you don't lose motivation. But don't just think about the goal itself. Think about why you chose to pursue this goal in the first place. Ask yourself questions about your motivation to pursue your goal. Is it to be happier? Is it to feel more accomplished? Really dig into your emotions, because a huge part of consistency is having consistent feelings. When you consistently feel like your goal is worthy and important, you're more likely to work on it. So don't let yourself forget the emotions that caused you to set the goal in the first place. Another way to revisit your goals often is to imagine what it will feel like when you accomplish your goal. Write in your journal about what your life will be like when you reach the finish line. How will it feel, taste, or smell? Get detailed in your descriptions to really motivate yourself. 7. Forgive your failures, and then keep going. The reality is, you're probably going to make some mistakes along the way. We all do. It's nothing to be ashamed of. The thing to actually be ashamed of is not trying to do better next time. When you miss a day of healthy eating, or forget to work on a project, or drop the ball on your exercise routine, give yourself some grace. If you beat yourself up too much, you may demoralize yourself and stop altogether. If you trip up on your way to your goal, learn from it. Ask yourself, what happened that day to make me lose my consistency? How can I make sure it doesn't happen again? Then, and this is the important part, keep going. Pick yourself up and go out there again tomorrow. Don't dwell on the past mistake. Just worry about your present self. Better to mess up 1,000 times but keep trying than to mess up once and give up. The person who messes up 1,000 times but keeps trying gets much closer to their goal than the person who messes up once and gives up. That person never gets anywhere. 8. Do it anyway. Goals are tough. That's why we want to achieve them in the first place. If they were easy, we wouldn't care so much about them. This is where your cultivation of inner resolve comes into play. Are you the type of person who gives up just as things get difficult? Or are you the type of person who pushes through anyway and keeps promises to themselves? On the days where you're dreading working towards your goal, just do it anyway. Force yourself to put your head down and do the work. Write the words, practice the instrument, lift the weights. It's nice to be motivated, but you don't have to be excited. You just have to do it. Becoming consistent is the key to unlocking your goals. And mastering consistency is about mastering ourselves, taking charge of our own lives, and developing habits and routines that lead to success. You may have heard the story of the stonemason who hits a large boulder with a hammer. The boulder does not change at all on his first, second, or 100th hit. However, after hitting the boulder 1,000 times, the boulder suddenly splits in half. Working towards your goal may sometimes feel like you're the stonemason. Nothing is happening. Or it may feel like working towards your goal is just another unimportant homework assignment. But remember to keep going, because eventually that boulder will split in half. Eventually, test day will arrive. And if you've done your homework, you'll pass with flying colours. The other day, I struggled with self-discipline. I warred with myself, negotiated, revisited arguments, made imaginary pro and con lists, and eventually realised that no, I could not get out of my daily workout. This happens pretty much every day, actually. 5 o'clock rolls around, my designated time for exercise, and I start to wonder, do I really need to do my workout today? What if I only did half my workout? What if I went for a walk around the block instead? What if I did some light stretching instead? What if I just stayed on the couch eating potato chips instead? Rather than getting down to business, I was negotiating with myself. This went on until I finally realised what I was doing. After which, I took a deep breath, put on my workout clothes, and went outside to do the darn thing. Self-discipline is not an easy thing to master. It's difficult, painful, frustrating, and our brains seem to want to avoid it at all costs. But it's also the key behind most success, great or small. Just do a quick Google search for quotes about self-discipline, and you'll be overwhelmed with how popular the topic is. Successful people from all disciplines and walks of life tout the magical effects of the wonder cure, self-discipline. For example, Roy L. Smith, who said, "Discipline is the refining fire by which talent becomes ability." Or Jim Rohn, who said, "We must all suffer one of two things, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret and disappointment." Or Robin Sharma, who said, "Discipline is built by consistently performing small acts of courage." So what exactly is all the fuss about? Why should we care about building self-discipline? Can't we just live our lives? Unless you're a very rare breed, most people have things in life they want, but don't have yet. Things like a high-paying job, or a doctorate degree, or toned abs. Unfortunately, these things don't happen overnight. They have to be chipped away over a long period of time, sort of like sculpting a marble statue. It took more than one hit of the hammer and chisel to sculpt David by Michelangelo. You have to chip away at the marble with hundreds, even thousands, of small hits over time. However, hitting a marble statue thousands of times can get exhausting, and it's easy to lose steam. Inevitably, our emotional high wears away, and we start to wonder the age-old question, what if I just stayed on the couch, eating potato chips instead? Here is where self-discipline comes in. When our excitement fails us, self-discipline rises to the occasion to make sure we achieve our goals, complete our workouts, get our doctorate degrees, put away the potato chips, and get off the couch. How do we start building this self-discipline and begin reaping the rewards of our hard work? There are a few tricks and practices that can help us remain on the path towards our goals. 1. Meditation. All that woo-woo stuff? It works. Meditation is an ancient art that helps clear your mind, focus your energy, and calm your emotions. If you find yourself struggling to exercise or study for the big exam, sit down for just 5 minutes and focus on your breath. There are tons of great meditation apps online that can help guide your practice. Many people praise meditation for helping them build self-discipline and focus the mind. Try it out next time you begin to feel overwhelmed about your personal marble statue. 2. Just work for 15 minutes. You know that moment right before you're supposed to do something and you think, I can't possibly do that? Well, then, don't. This feeling is probably a symptom of overwhelm. You may be thinking about all the different steps you have to take to accomplish your task, which is probably causing anxiety. So instead of trying to do everything, just work on the task for 15 minutes. Whatever you get done in that time is what you get done. After that, you can take a break. 3. Do it every day. For an extra bonus, do 15 minutes of your task every single day. Not just Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. Not just Tuesdays. Not just once every month, but every day. This works particularly well for big goals you might have, like writing a book or becoming a professional artist. If you commit to working on your task 15 minutes every single day, it takes out all the guesswork associated with it. It also takes away all your negotiating power. Now, instead of getting caught up in internal arguments about whether or not you have to do the thing today, you already know your answer. Yes, because you have to do it every day. No days off. 4. Do the very first thing. Another way to counteract overwhelm and build your self-discipline is to break your task up into its smallest parts. Then do just the very first thing. If your goal is to build a website, but you're having trouble working on it regularly, then just start with the first step, turning on your computer. Then, after that, the next step, opening up your browser, and so on, until you find yourself in the midst of work and have forgotten all about your hesitations altogether. 5. Count down from 10. Another great trick if you find yourself struggling with self-discipline is to use the countdown method. Let's say it's time for your workout. but you're feeling extra unmotivated today. Instead of giving up, try counting down from 10. Tell yourself that once you get to 1, you will take immediate action, no matter how small. Something about this mind trick always seems to get people up and moving. 6. Make really good friends. There are good friends, the kind who you have fun with. And there are really good friends, the kind who will hold you accountable. Make some of these really good friends and ask them to be your accountability buddies. This works particularly well if your friends also have the same goals as you do. Then you can schedule your goals together and incorporate a little healthy competition. You'll be much less likely to quit when you feel like someone else is counting on you to keep going. 7. Have a consistent life. Self-discipline is extremely difficult to master in the best of times. Having dramatic mood swings and an inconsistent schedule only make it worse. Consistency in your life will help create consistency in your emotions, which will in turn make it more likely that you'll have the energy and motivation you need to practice self-discipline. So go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. Eat regular meals. Do activities that fire you up. You don't have to have crazy energy all the time, but you don't want surprise mood swings that jeopardize your self-discipline. However, bad moods are bound to happen. This is where all your work on self-discipline comes into play. So you can keep chipping away at your goals despite the lack of motivation. Building self-discipline is a lifelong journey. Don't be discouraged if you don't have the self-discipline you wish you had right away. It will take time and effort, just like the goals you're working towards. But at the end of the day, self-discipline is worth all the hard work. It's what builds careers and health and dreams. It's what we have to rely on when we don't have motivation or excitement. I build up my self-discipline every day when I go to do my workout, because self-discipline is just like those tiny chips at the marble statue. It's all about the little choices, the choices we make every day to get up to our alarm, to do the work, to finish the project, to have a little courage in the face of fear and doubt about ourselves and our abilities, to not stay on the couch eating potato chips, but to get up and face our dreams, even if we don't feel like it. In life, everyone encounters hardships. Some will be big, and others will be small. Whether it's the loss of a loved one, getting laid off, heartbreak, divorce, or even just putting orange juice in this morning's cereal instead of milk, there will be tough times. When these difficult times inevitably arrive, we can either choose to let them swallow us up, or we can choose to keep going and make the best of the cards life has dealt us. Yes, even when there's orange juice in your cereal. This is where a very important skill comes in: resilience. Resilience is the ability to pick yourself back up and move forward after tragedy or challenges. It's grit, it's determination, it's deciding not to quit, and that even if the worst happens, you'll be okay. But this important skill is not an innate ability. Children are not born resilient, as you could probably tell by their fragility and inability to form a sentence, nor do they naturally become proficient at it as they age. Resilience has to be built and developed over time, which means us adults have to figure out how to get resilient on our own. Luckily, resilience can be developed through mindset shifts, practice, and through healthy habits everyone has the ability to implement. Here are just 10 ways to start building your resilience so you can weather through the hard times life throws your way, orange juice and all. 1. Be proactive. Resilient people are proactive. This means they face their problems head on. They don't let problems fester in the corner, growing larger and larger by the day, until it becomes an uncontrollable infestation. Instead, resilient people take immediate action. The next time you encounter a problem in your life, even a small one, force yourself to be proactive in fixing the problem. Rather than spiraling into a storm of negative thoughts about the situation, focus on taking action. Ask yourself, what can I do right now to minimize the damage or fix the issue? 2. Protect your downtime. Resilient people are well rested. They have the energy necessary to confront their problems. It's very difficult to be proactive about difficult situations when you've been running yourself ragged, fueled by 3 shots of espresso and sporting a pair of bags under your eyes. So practice resilience by simply setting aside time every day for yourself. You can use the time for self-reflection, meditation, or just for some needed TLC. But by protecting your downtime, you'll have the strength and mental preparedness to focus when issues and challenges cross your path. 3. Change your mindset about adversity. One of the biggest fixes you can make in order to build resilience is to stop thinking about adversity as a problem and think about it as a chance for growth. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask yourself, "What can I learn from this?" This reframing question is powerful because it distracts you from the pain or frustration of the situation and makes you start looking for an answer to an interesting question. Focusing on how you can grow stronger from a situation is a much more productive use of your brain cells than wallowing in self-pity. 4. Build relationships. Resilient people know they can't do everything by themselves. That's where close friends and family come in. Develop strong, healthy relationships with people you trust, so you have someone to turn to when you need a shoulder to cry on, or a cheerleader to celebrate your successes. So take time out of your day to put yourself out there and work on your relationships. You'll be grateful you did when you encounter challenges down the road. 5. Focus on the present. An easy trick to develop resilience is simply to practice focusing on the present. Whenever you find yourself bogged down by past mistakes or worried about the future, catch yourself and then refocus on the present. Mistakes, both past and future, are not in our control, and thinking about them too much only causes additional stress. Plus, if you think too much about the past or future, that's energy and time you could be using towards your present, the thing you can control. So build your resilience up by developing your awareness of your thoughts and feelings and turning them towards the present moment, rather than towards things you can't change. 6. Know that life isn't fair. Growing up, your parents or teachers might have told you that life isn't fair when you really wanted something you couldn't get. As a kid, it might have been pretty upsetting. But as we get older, the idea that life isn't fair can actually be comforting. Life isn't fair, not for anyone. Every human being on this planet experiences hardship, some more than others, but there are still problems in everyone's life. You are not alone in pain. Resilient people realize this about life, and they don't dwell on wrapping their heads around the fact that something bad has happened. Instead, they know that bad things happen, and they accept them when they come. They know life isn't fair, and they don't spend time worrying about it. There's nothing they can do. So it's more important to focus on things within their control. 7. Stay flexible. Resilience may bring to mind images of strong, immovable objects, like giant boulders, or a weed growing in a sidewalk crack. You may be imagining any number of things that don't change, despite what goes on around them. However, this could not be further from the truth. Resilience actually involves a lot of flexibility and creativity. Challenges in your life may cause you to have to pivot, to change direction. This doesn't mean you have to give up on goals or dreams. It just means you may have to reach your goals in a way you hadn't anticipated before. Stay creative with your options in life, and you'll be able to navigate through any difficulty. 8. Focus on what you can change. As we've touched on a bit so far, one of the best things you can do to build resilience is to focus only on what you can change. People who constantly blame their environment for their circumstances, whether or not they are right or wrong, definitely never see their circumstances change. However, resilient people who decide that they are the force which can change their own life do see changes in their circumstances. A defeated attitude doesn't help overcome challenges. Only those who rise to the challenge see change and growth. So get rid of that defeatist mindset and accept that you are the one with the power. 9. Be grateful. Negativity is the greatest killer of resilience. Practice gratitude in your daily life as much as possible. We all know it's far too easy to focus on negative things in life. Our brains are hardwired to do so and keep us out of danger. But if you know you're not in any immediate danger, try shifting your attention to the good things about a situation. This, just like anything, becomes easier with practice. So try writing down 3 things you're grateful for every day. You'll be surprised at how many things you come up with, and you may end up more content with your life as you see your growing list of reasons to be happy. 10. Practice resilience in the wild. One way to develop resilience is to seek out challenges in your life on purpose. For example, try starting a 30-day challenge, or apply to jobs until you have 50 rejection letters, or even try taking cold showers every day. Heck, you might even end up enjoying it. Putting yourself out there again and again will teach you to not be so afraid of failure, and will show you that no matter what, you can make it through a lot of things unharmed. Resilience may be one of the most important skills we can learn in our lives. To be able to overcome adversity and frustration and hurt and heartbreak is an invaluable skill, because all these challenges will inevitably come our way eventually. So, if we can be ready for them, if we can be resilient, in whatever small way possible, then we can spend less time affected by things we lose or lose out on, and more time experiencing the joy of the amazing things in our life that we do have. There's probably nothing more frustrating than knowing an exam is on the horizon, knowing you need to study for it, and completely lacking any motivation to actually sit down and get started. Studying is one of those things that's easy to lose motivation for. It can seem overwhelming, impossible, and never-ending. Studying as an idea is so amorphous it easily causes panic, fear, and even total shutdown. But regaining motivation for studying isn't impossible, and there are several ways to make sure your studying is stress-free, structured, manageable, and even fun. Let's break some of them down. 1. Remember why you study. The first thing to do, right after you sit down to study, but before you bust out the notebooks and pens, is to remember why you're studying. What makes studying so important to you right now? Is it because you want to become a marine biologist and you need to pass a test to finally launch your career? Or is it something less dramatic, like wanting to ace an upcoming final? Or maybe the subject matter isn't particularly interesting to you at all, or it might not even be relevant to your future career goals. Your answer to why studying is so important to you right now might just be that it's not. That's the problem. Well, turns out that's okay too. Just because something seems unnecessary or worthless doesn't mean there isn't any reason to do it. Reasons to study, even when you feel like it's fruitless, can be as simple as keeping up your overall grades, passing a class so you never have to take it again, or even learning something outside your comfort zone so you can draw new connections to the topics or disciplines you are actually interested in. Take some time to reflect on what your reason for studying might be. This can go a long way in motivating you to start. Viewing studying as a part of a larger picture can help make your emotional resolve to study much stronger. 2. Prepare your environment. Your environment has an enormous impact on your emotional state, so make sure you're studying in a place that helps, rather than hinders, your work. If you're feeling particularly unmotivated to study, try cleaning and tidying up your desk, lighting a candle, or turning on soft music or ambient noise. Remove distractions from your space as well, like cell phones, clutter, and other projects you're not working on at the moment. It also may be a good idea to make sure you're not so comfortable in your workspace that you fall asleep or feel lazy. Sitting upright at a desk can put you in the right mental mood to dig into your work. 3. Change locations. Sometimes your typical studying location may get stale. If you're having a hard time motivating yourself, try moving to a new environment to study. Going to the local library or a coffee shop can make you feel like you're really doing something and can turn your motivation on full blast. Something about the new environment makes our brains feel refreshed and ready to tackle our work. If you can't go to a library or coffee shop, you can just try moving your work into another room, or even working from the floor. 4. Get a study partner. There is nothing quite like peer pressure to get you to do something. So, why not use peer pressure to get you to do the right thing? When you feel that motivation slipping from your grasp, grab a study partner to help you concentrate. Of course, make sure your study partner or partners are committed to working on studying too, so you don't end up distracting each other. As an extra bonus, set a time and a place to meet up with your study buddy and work. This way, you have an obligation to meet and are more likely to show up and get things done. 5. Utilize YouTube. If you can't meet up with a friend, try putting on a Study With Me YouTube video in the background while you work. These videos can simulate the feeling of studying with someone else, while also providing ambient sound or soft music. Many of them even include timers to keep you on track for when you need to study and when you can take breaks. 6. Make studying a game. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to study is that they feel overwhelmed. They're stuck in a negative emotional rut and they can't get out. Their brains immediately try to run from the bad emotions, which means not studying and not confronting the problem. They put it off and eventually realize it's too late. So instead of fighting against your feelings of overwhelm, replace them with new feelings. Turning your studying into a game is a great way to change your emotional state. By turning studying into a game, you stop thinking about the end result and focus on winning your little game instead. And that is way more fun than stressing about learning everything. One easy way to turn your studying into a game is to quiz your study partners. Create flashcards, keep track of points, or simply see who can rattle off memorizable information the fastest. Of course, you can also do this by yourself if you don't have a study partner. An easy way to make studying into a game for yourself is to simply list out each of the concepts you need to master, and then checkmark them off as you learn them. That might not sound like much of a game, but by checking each concept off, you get to see how much progress you're making and feel good about every little milestone. 7. Make your notes pretty. Another way to replace the feeling of overwhelm is to make your studying process more fun through an art project. Try rewriting your notes, but this time create fun doodles to illustrate key points. Even just using interesting designs, fonts, and colors can help make the whole thing a lot more fun. Remember, your notes don't have to be Pinterest worthy. All that matters is that you enjoy making them. As soon as you start having fun with the note-taking process, you'll actually enjoy studying and have more motivation to keep going. 8. Create a cheat sheet. You can also make studying more fun by creating a cheat sheet that only takes up one piece of paper. It can be an interesting challenge to try to fit all of the relevant information on just one sheet. Plus, simply the act of making a cheat sheet will help you retain the information you need. Even if you can't use the cheat sheet for a test, you'll have learned everything you need to. 9. Just do the first thing. Sometimes, no matter how much we prepare mentally, no matter how fun we make it, no matter how many study partners we have, our motivation just isn't there. And you know what? That's okay. It's okay to not have any motivation. It's okay to feel overwhelmed, stressed, frustrated, to feel like there's no way you could ever tackle the mountain of things you need to tackle in order to be prepared. Feeling that way is normal. But despite all those feelings, you can still study. Your feelings are just your feelings, and they don't have to dictate how you act. Recognize your lack of motivation. Think about where it's coming from, then accept it and move forward anyway. Let your emotions be, and instead of trying for hours to create motivation out of nothing, just do the very first step on your studying to-do list. That first step might be something as simple as opening up a book, turning on a laptop, taking out a pen and piece of paper, sitting down at your desk. Motivation actually often follows action. So, if you put yourself in motion first, your motivation may end up making a surprise appearance after all. So, if the motivation to study continually eludes you, stop chasing it. Worry about getting the very first thing done. Motivation will follow later, and by the time it arrives, you'll already be studying. Have you ever had a goal that no matter how hard you worked, or how many hours you dedicated, or how many affirmations you chanted, just didn't seem to make any progress? Despite all your best effort, it felt like you were running on a treadmill, working hard, but not going anywhere. When I decided to take my career to the next level and become a freelancer, I encountered this problem. Even though I was putting in countless hours every week, I just wasn't getting any clients. At the time, I didn't even know the first thing about business or marketing or how to sell my services. The only thing I actually knew how to do was the service I was trying to get clients for. And the scary truth was, I had no idea if I would ever get a single client or make a single dollar. There were weeks and weeks of what seemed like zero progress being made. I remember creating a spreadsheet to track my daily progress towards my goals and watching as the days piled up with nothing to show for it. So there were definitely more than a few times when I wondered if I should give up and stick with a normal job. But despite not seeing much progress, I kept with it. And there were a few things I did that helped me stay on track and eventually led to a full-fledged career as a freelancer. 1. The first thing I did was set myself a re-evaluation date. Sometimes the fruits of your labor can be like an iceberg. Only a small part is visible above the water, but below, a huge iceberg is forming. Self-doubt and anxiety about whether you're making any progress can sabotage your goals, even if you're actually making significant progress just below the surface. So, if you think your goal might take some time to manifest change, try setting a re-evaluation date before you quit and give up on yourself too early. For a re-evaluation date, simply pick a day on the calendar that makes sense for the size and scope of your particular goal. Then refuse to rethink, reassess, or self-doubt your decisions until that day. For example, I gave myself 3 whole months to work on my freelancing career before I would reevaluate whether it was even possible. Until then, I would just think about doing and learning everything I could. In the words of George Lucas, you simply have to put one foot in front of the other and keep going. Put blinders on and plow right ahead. 2. Next, I reframed all my setbacks and failures as learning experiences. There's nothing more demoralizing and frustrating than feeling like you're constantly messing up or self-sabotaging your own goal. Very early on in my freelancing journey, I realized that if I saw every setback and failure as a sign that I should quit, then I would never get anywhere. In fact, I probably would have quit on the very first day. So, instead of seeing setbacks and failures as negative things, reframe them in your mind as learning experiences. You may not be learning from a textbook or a class, but you're learning from experiences, and those experiences can actually be some of the best teachers. Next time something doesn't work out, it might just mean that you need to pivot. You've actually just been given a little mini lesson to help you towards your goal. This also makes each failure less personal and might even make the whole thing feel more like a game. Rather than viewing failure as a reflection of your worth, view it as a natural part of an interesting challenge that will take time and effort. It can even be fun. As Albert Einstein said, failure is success in progress. 3. I focused on enjoying the doing. It's easy to get caught up worrying about how much progress you're making and forget to enjoy the actual journey. If you can find joy in the act of working towards your goals, then you will have won half the battle. Obviously, when money and livelihood and the grocery bills are all on the line, it's hard not to freak out a little about getting results. And while a certain amount of pressure from deadlines can help to speed up the process, it's important to remember to enjoy the moment. If you constantly feel negative while working towards your goal, you'll quickly come to resent it and will be more likely to quit. Again, turn your goal into a game, a test, a challenge. Enjoy the puzzle of it, rather than worrying about the prize. If I had worried about the prize too much in my freelance career, I would have been paralyzed with stress and never gotten anywhere. 4. I celebrated every milestone, even the tiny ones. 100 views on my blog post. Celebrate. I got an interview with a potential client. Celebrate. Made $1,000. Celebrate. Every seemingly insignificant moment was celebrated. Even if I just got up and got to work that day, I celebrated. I kept track of every little win and made sure I took plenty of time to bask in the glow of that success. Positivity was everything. Excitement was everything. Enjoying the little moments is what kept me chugging along. And I didn't just celebrate the little milestones. I also celebrated each learning opportunity. I celebrated the increase in my business knowledge, in my self-discipline, in my growing ability to stick with it despite setbacks. In the words of Sebastian Thrun, it's important to celebrate your failures as much as your successes. If you celebrate your failures really well, and if you get to the motto and say, "Wow, I failed, I tried, I was wrong, I learned something," then you realize you have no fear. And when your fear goes away, you can move the world. Ultimately, after just a few weeks, I ended up getting an amazing retainer client who was perfect for me, and which resulted in getting even more clients because people saw my work for them. It became a strange snowball effect. And all that effort I put in at the beginning when I wasn't seeing any results, it ended up coming in handy. The iceberg had fully formed, and there ended up being way more under there than I had realized. I now had the business and marketing knowledge to attract and get clients that I really loved. I had spent so much time learning, aka messing up. I now could handle all kinds of situations with ease. So, if you're feeling frustrated about a goal, remember that there just might be a lot of things happening under the surface you're not aware of. With consistency and time, you will eventually see results. As Tony Robbins wrote, in essence, if we want to direct our lives, we must take control of our consistent actions. It's not what we do once in a while that shapes our lives, but what we do consistently. And remember, results aren't everything. Learning, growing, enjoying yourself along the way, those are the things that really matter. So keep going and keep learning, even when you don't see any results. In the first semester of my freshman year of college, I had to take a math class to fulfill my major's requirements. My advisor enrolled me in a 300-level statistics course, which ended up being much harder than I anticipated. It had been a few years since I had even taken a math class, and I hadn't ever taken a stats class before. That whole semester was a slog, and I got some of the worst grades on quizzes and homework I'd ever gotten. As the end of the semester loomed, I realized I would have to pull off a miracle in the final exam in order to pass and keep up my GPA. The week before the final exam, I printed off 5 copies of the study test our professor had posted online. I took the practice test over and over and over again until I could get a 100% on it without having to look at the book. The day of the test came, and all my hard work paid off. I got a great score and passed the class. While taking that many practice tests wasn't easy and definitely took up a lot of time, it ended up being incredibly worth it. The practice tests forced me to learn the material inside and out, and to not just memorize the formulas, but to understand them and know how to apply them. What I didn't realize at the time was that I had just implemented one of the most effective studying techniques known to modern psychology: active recall. Active recall is the practice of retrieving information from your brain. Active recall methods include activities such as practice tests or flashcards. These techniques work incredibly well for learning because they strengthen the pathways in your brain that lead to the information you're trying to learn and ultimately make it easier for you to remember them when you get the exam. In the celebrated psychology book, Make It Stick: The Science of Successful Learning by Peter C. Brown et al., Brown et al. Demonstrate the power of active recall through a variety of scientific studies conducted over the last decade. They also shed light on just how effective or ineffective some of the most popular studying techniques actually are. So, why might your current studying strategies not be working that well for you? And what can you do differently to see an improvement in your learning and ultimately on your exams? First, let's take a look at what doesn't work so well when it comes to preparing for tests. Many people use rereading as a study strategy. In fact, it's extremely popular among students to reread their textbooks over and over, highlighting them, underlining them, even summarizing them. However, it turns out that rereading is actually not that effective of a studying tool. In a study conducted by Callender and McDaniel, The Limited Benefits of Rereading Educational Texts, they demonstrate through 4 different experiments that rereading is not as effective as we thought. In their experiment, participants read educational texts and then were tested on the material. With only a few exceptions, the participants who reread the text did not significantly increase their testing performance. As Brown et al. Puts it, rereading has 3 strikes against it. It is time-consuming, it doesn't result in durable memory, and it often involves a kind of unwitting self-deception, as growing familiarity with the text comes to feel like mastery of the content. The hours immersed in rereading can seem like due diligence, but the amount of study time is no measure of mastery. Essentially, while rereading may seem like a simple and effective studying solution, it actually takes up more time than it's worth and doesn't create long-lasting connections because it does not require the rereader to actively study. Brown et al. Also discussed that mindless repetition is not a successful study strategy either, since simply being able to repeat something does not necessarily mean you understand it or could apply that information in different ways. So, if you find yourself studying for an exam by rereading or repeating facts to yourself over and over, you may not be giving yourself the leg up that you expect. But what can you do instead? What would make studying for your exams actually worth your time? How can you learn information more thoroughly and accurately? Here's where active recall, or active retrieval, comes in. Brown et al. Write, retrieval practice, recalling facts or concepts or events from memory, is a more effective learning strategy than review by rereading. Flashcards are a simple example. Retrieval strengthens the memory and interrupts forgetting. A single, simple quiz after reading a text or hearing a lecture produces better learning and remembering than rereading the text or reviewing lecture notes. Instead of rereading a text, try creating a set of flashcards, either with note cards or with an app on your phone. Practicing flashcards will help you learn which information you already know and which information you need to practice more. You'll also be forced to think harder about each flashcard question, further strengthening your brain's ability to retrieve the information. This method is a simple and effective way to practice active retrieval. Brown et al. Also recommend, of course, giving yourself practice quizzes. If your teacher has given you practice quizzes to use, that's great. But if not, you can make your own by writing down questions as you read. Then, when you're done reading the material, close your book and try answering all the questions you wrote down for yourself. Retrieval practices such as these have shown to be much more effective than any other study method. For example, experiments conducted by Roediger and McDaniel in a school district illustrated that active retrieval improves students' grades from a C+ to an A-, with benefits lasting the rest of the school year. But there are even more study methods you can use besides active recall to help enhance your studying. Brown et al. Also promote the effectiveness of spaced repetition and interleaving. They explain that practice that's spaced out, interleaved with other learning, and varied produces better mastery, longer retention, and more versatility. So, rather than cramming as much information as you can into one night of studying, it's much more effective to space out your studying over time. In a study by Nate Cornell, Optimizing Learning Using Flashcards, Spacing is More Effective Than Cramming, Cornell conducted 3 experiments where participants used a web-based study program to learn GRE-type word pairs. While 72% of the participants believe that cramming the flashcards would be more effective than spacing the learning out, the experiments actually proved that spacing was more effective than massing, or cramming, for 90% of the participants. So next time you go to practice your flashcards, try spacing out how often you look at them, rather than looking at them just once. Finally, interleaving is another effective study method where a student combines different topics together while studying, rather than blocking them separately. In a study conducted by Taylor and Rohrer, children who practiced interleaving during their studying saw worse performance during their study session, but actually performed higher on final tests. Unfortunately, while we'd all like to have an easy fix to studying, a way to make it all stick in our heads without having to put in more work, countless studies prove that it's actually when we have more difficulties and put in more effort that the information sticks. Brown et al. Write that many teachers believe that if they can make learning easier and faster, the learning will be better. Much research turns this belief on its head. When learning is harder, it's stronger and lasts longer. Brown et al.'s best advice for learning, then? Embrace difficulties. Embrace when you don't get the answer right. It means you're learning. Having a positive attitude then, even when you don't get the flashcards right, or you get stuck on a practice quiz question, may just be the most crucial technique for keeping up your study habit and acing your next exam. So, you're in a rut. The dishes have piled up. Your work lays unfinished in a pile on your desk. You haven't been to the gym in days or even weeks. You spend your time watching TV or TikTok or playing video games all day. Somehow, you've managed to wake up on the wrong side of the bed every morning. You lack energy, motivation. You can't even remember why you used to be so productive in the first place. What's worse, the thought of picking yourself up by the bootstraps and getting back on top of things fills you with dread. You don't want to clean your room. Lying on the couch all day is a much more enjoyable pastime. Catching up on work sounds like a huge burden, and the further you slide into this rut, the harder it is to come back out of it. But you are here, watching this video. This means you're probably feeling sick and frustrated with your inability to get moving. You don't want to be in a rut anymore. The pile of dirty laundry and the approaching work or school deadlines are starting to give you anxiety. However, no matter what you do, you can't seem to break out of this funk. First of all, it's important to realize that you aren't alone. Lots of people experience periods in their life where nothing seems to go right for them, and they can't give 110% anymore. Being in a rut definitely doesn't mean you're broken beyond repair. It just means it's time to implement some new strategies to help you feel confident, energized, and motivated again. Let's look at a few different tactics you can use to pull yourself out of your rut and back into action quickly. The first step to getting out of a rut is realizing that you are not fine. In a TEDx talk by Mel Robbins, she describes how dangerous the F word can be. Often, we tell ourselves that we're fine. Fine not having the things we want. Fine living our lives on autopilot. Fine feeling unmotivated and unenergized. Essentially, we become complacent. However, what we need to do instead is acknowledge that we are not fine. We are not fine with the way things are, with our lack of inspiration, with our missed due dates, with sleeping in until noon. When we acknowledge that we're not fine, we can then create the emotional impetus to force ourselves forward. One of the reasons you probably find yourself in a rut is because you've accepted it. You've accepted leaving your dirty laundry on the floor. It's fine, you subconsciously tell yourself. You've accepted not going to the gym anymore. It's fine. You've accepted that you'll turn in your work a day or two late. It's fine. Once you acknowledge that, no, things are actually not fine, you can begin to do the work you need to do to get out of your rut and back to your usual self. Feeling unsatisfied with your life while in your funk can give you the emotional energy you need to change things. The next important thing to realize when trying to get out of a rut is that humans are essentially ruled by our emotions. If you're in a rut right now, you're probably spending a lot of time watching TV
or with your face glued to your smartphone, or even playing video games until late at night. All these activities supply your brain with lots of dopamine, which makes you feel good for short bursts. Your brain loves getting dopamine through these easy activities and ends up chasing it over and over again. Eventually, your brain gets hooked on dopamine. You become addicted to your phone, or shows, or games because they supply you with those quick dopamine hits and allow you to escape into other worlds. When we get addicted to dopamine, it's very hard to quit. So in order to stop sitting on the couch all day, it's important to approach your rut like an addiction. Remove the source of dopamine from your life gradually. You may even experience withdrawal symptoms, but try to keep at it. Try turning your phone off and putting it somewhere out of sight. Or try working in a new environment, like a coffee shop or library, where you can't get distracted by your game controller sitting nearby. When you understand the power of dopamine on your brain, you can take the necessary steps to remove your distractions and replace them with more fulfilling activities. Another key principle to understand when it comes to getting out of a rut is that motivation actually follows action. Motivation and action are sort of like a circle, where motivation causes us to take action. However, taking action also causes us to gain motivation. So if you find yourself struggling to find the motivation to take action, to clean up your life, to get back on track, to finally fold that pile of laundry on your bed, you probably never will because you're stuck at the bottom of an unmoving Ferris wheel. Instead of waiting around for your motivation to suddenly appear, try taking action first instead. Once you take action, you'll probably discover motivation along the way to keep going. Just taking one small action is enough, followed by praising yourself with a reward or a pat on the back. This is self-induced dopamine, can get the Ferris wheel back up again. The cycle of action and motivation will kick into motion once more. However, while taking action, even if it's small, is a great way to start the motivation action wheel turning again, you can also take some steps to gain back your motivation first. Simply just getting a little bit of motivation can be enough if it causes you to take immediate action, which then results in more motivation and more action. Some ways you can give yourself a little motivation is through listening to inspirational speakers, uplifting music, reading a self-improvement book, or listening to a motivational podcast. Even taking 10 minutes to watch a YouTube video about how to get out of a rut can get you inspired enough to do a bit of cleaning or walk around your neighborhood for exercise. You can also try switching up your environment, reorganizing your workspace, or getting out of the house. It's easy to feel stuck in a rut when your routine has gone stale and the places you live and work have become tedious. Whatever you can do to improve your emotional state, just enough to get you to take action, can be well worth it to help get things moving again. The last thing to remember when it comes to getting out of a rut is that it may not happen overnight. Don't forget to forgive yourself for your mistakes, and don't expect yourself to get back to 110% immediately. Getting out of a rut usually takes time, patience, and the ability to be gentle with yourself. Every time you accomplish a task, make sure to give a little cheer, high-five yourself, or somehow give yourself a reward. Keep focusing on moving forward and getting momentum back in your life, one step at a time. It might be hard, and there might be setbacks, but eventually, you'll relearn how good it feels to be productive and energized, and you'll finally get out of your rut. In his celebrated book on organization, The Bullet Journal Method, Ryder Carroll describes his personal organization and productivity system, the bullet journal. Throughout his life, Carroll struggled with keeping track of tasks, often forgetting important information and feeling overwhelmed by tasks. However, through trial and error, and after trying countless other organization systems, he finally hit upon a way to, as he puts it, track the past, order the present, and design the future. Enter the bullet journal, a pen and notebook system that takes things back to basics. Part to-do list and part journal, the bullet journal revolutionized the way Carroll approached his life, his work, and how he got things done. And it's helped many others do the same. In his book, Carroll breaks down exactly how to use the bullet journal system, but he also offers some insights on how to plan your days more effectively. Many of these tips can actually apply to whatever productivity system you use in your own life. Whether you use the bullet journal method yourself, or stick with a simple to-do list, or use an online system like Notion, Google Calendar, or something else entirely, you can implement some of these principles to make your life simpler and more productive. Here are 5 of Carol's tips for planning your week effectively. 1. Take a mental inventory. Before you dive into color coding all the hours of your day, or assigning time to each task you hope to accomplish, take a moment to create a mental inventory. It's a great idea to do this the Friday before your week starts, so when Monday comes, you're ready to hit the ground running. To take a mental inventory, write down anything and everything that you know you want to accomplish. Don't hold back, just let it all out, either on a piece of paper or in a digital list. You'll probably discover you have a lot more tasks you hope to complete than you thought you did. This is because we often suffer from decision fatigue, a phenomenon that occurs when we have too many choices for how to spend our time, leading to burnout. Carol writes that the first step to recovering from decision fatigue, to get out from under the pile of choices weighing on you, is to get some distance from them. And the best way to get distance? Write it all down. Once your brain isn't taking up energy thinking about all the tasks you need to accomplish, it will have the space to step back and evaluate what's really important. Now that all your tasks for the next week are written down, consider each task individually. How important is this task? Is it vital? Is it necessary? Taking a mental inventory gives you the chance to cross tasks off your list that actually aren't that important and would have kept you from working on the things that really matter. 2. Time blocking. If you find yourself particularly overwhelmed by a task, or are not sure when you'll get a chance to work on it, a good way to make sure you get around to it is by using time blocking. Time blocking is a method where you set aside a certain amount of time to work on a task. So, for example, instead of your to-do list saying 1. Write essay, 2. Work on project, 3. Clean room, you would set up your to-do list like this: 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. draft essay, 11:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. make final edits to project, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. clean room. This way, you only have a certain amount of time to work on the task, allowing you to give it your full attention and adding pressure to get the task done in that time frame. As Carol explains, time boxing adds 2 key motivational ingredients to a task you've been putting off: structure and urgency. 3. Morning reflection. While setting up your week the Friday before helps get your thoughts organized, it's also a good practice to include a morning reflection period. This reflection doesn't have to be very long, only about 5 to 15 minutes, but it can set your day up for massive success. Take a few moments to sit down for a reflection with your to-do list, Notion board, bullet journal, or whatever you use. You can do this while you drink your morning coffee, or just as you're sitting down at your desk. The morning reflection is a time to go over the tasks you have prepared for the day and think about why you're doing each of them. Another good tip is to imagine yourself completing each task to give yourself an extra burst of motivation. 4. Evening reflection. Where the morning reflection helps you kickstart your day with the right attitude, the evening reflection helps you unwind and unburden your mind. During your evening reflection, consider each task you completed during the day and ask yourself questions like: why is this important? Why am I doing this? Why is this a priority? An evening reflection practice helps focus and clarify your priorities so you can plan accordingly. Not only does it put a nice bookend on your day, but you get the chance to mark any completed tasks as done and move uncompleted tasks to another day. This is an important aspect of the evening reflection because it helps you feel like the day is complete instead of a never-ending to-do list. You should also take this moment to appreciate your progress and put a close on the day. As Carol writes, reflection helps identify what nourishes you so you can make better decisions as you seed the next season of your life. 5. Celebrate. Our brains love dopamine. When we scroll for hours on TikTok, our brains get tiny bursts of dopamine every time we laugh at a video or think something is interesting. That's why we scroll for so long. Our brains are getting tons of what they love, dopamine. That's why it's also so important to celebrate every task that you accomplish. So each time you cross something off your list, give yourself a high five, a thumbs up, a big smile. Get up from your desk and do a dance. Do a fist pump. Say, "You got this." If it's a big achievement, give yourself an even bigger celebration. Call a friend or take the day off early. Do whatever you need to do to make sure you properly celebrate. Carol puts it this way: celebrating your victories isn't just about patting yourself on the back. It trains you to identify positive moments, which allows you to discover and enjoy more of them. Of course, the most important thing about whatever tips or system you implement is that it works. Any system that becomes too complicated for you to keep track of, or that bogs you down, or that keeps you from being able to work on your tasks is not a good system. So take what tips interest you, test them out, see how they fit into your system, and leave behind anything that causes more friction and frustration in your life. Your productivity system should always help you more than it hurts. No matter what productivity or organization system you use in your life, whether it's the bullet journal or something else, hopefully you can implement some of these tips to make your system even more effective and make your life that much easier.